On.
Recording.
Diolch yn fawr. Croeso gynnes iawn heddiw i bwrdd HEIW. You're all very welcome. Nice to see everybody. I'd like to welcome Melton as an observer, Matthew Mahoney, Deputy Director of Digital. He's here in the wake of Sian Richards. Tom Lawson, our Deputy Medical Director, Ian Matheson, who is our future Director of Education Strategy and Transformation. Helen Thomas, Assistant Director of Leadership and Succession, and Zoe Gibson, our National Retention Lead. Ryan Cunningham, Head of Workforce and Organisational Development in attendance, and Angie Oliver, Deputy Director of Workforce. So you're all very welcome. I've got apologies for absence from Sian Richards, our Director of Digital Development. Are there any declarations of interest not already taken that and registered that are pertinent to today's agenda? No, thank you very much. I'm now going to move swiftly on to the draft minutes of the board meeting held on the 28th of March 2024. This is for accuracy, please. Page 1, page 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Are you all happy that's an accurate record of our meeting? Well done, Sarah. I'm now going to take you to the action log 1.5. You please note the action log. Any actions left and completed? All completed. So we'll go back now, please, to the draft minutes of the board of the 28th of March. And this is for matters arising that are not already on today's substantive agenda. So page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Are you happy for me to sign these minutes off?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Now, I know it's one of the most highly anticipated events as the Chair's report. First of all, I want to draw attention to the infected blood inquiry, what is going on in the post office inquiry, and I want you to take it into context of what we've seen in the press in terms of organisations within Wales. I really think it's important to underline at this point the importance of organisational culture, the importance of keeping quality, safety, and the well-being of staff in all that we do, the importance of strong governance, of participating with integrity, and being very clear that we hear and listen. Those lessons are really hard-earned lessons, and a high cost has been paid by many patients and by many employees under the most difficult circumstances. So I think that our pledges towards the compassionate leadership agenda are already a very important part, but will play a much more important part going forwards so that we lead by example in HEIW. And I'd like the board to make sure that we keep to those principles now and going forwards. It was great to welcome visitors come and see and hear about our compassionate leadership. that was great, but actually making it living and thriving on the ground and working with our colleagues across health and social care. The second thing I just want to highlight is today is the last board meeting for two of our executive directors. Push becomes a Deputy Chief Medical Officer on Monday. On Monday. I'd like to formally thank you for your huge contribution to the board and look forward to your support in your new role.
Absolutely. I think that's, there's a hell of a lot I've learned here, and on the wider workforce issues that we have big challenges on, and I think making sure that that's heard in Welsh Government is one of my priorities.
And then there's Julie. This will be your last formal board. And we will have a longer opportunity to say goodbye to you. However, I want to put it formally on record today, our thanks for the preconception work you did in bringing HEIW into existence, for your energy and your expertise, and particularly for your leadership in the compassionate leadership agenda. I think you leave a great legacy, which is admirable. Thank you. I'd also like to pay tribute to a colleague who's passed away, who many of you will know, and that's Professor Agored. There are very few people who can have an influence and be so humble. And I think he's proven himself to be not a bad lad from Merthyr. And I would like to extend our sympathy and our thoughts to the family. Finally, you can read my report. We've got the opportunity of a lifetime for renewal and re-energy of our board as we bring new members, both executive and independent members. But I would like to think that we can continue the loving assurance and inquiry as independent members, and the effectiveness and the drive of our executive team together going forwards. And it's that working together in a very professional way, I hope and that is not done by chance. It requires effort, and I'm very grateful to the Chief Exec coming up with a plan on how we're going to be doing that and working together. So then if you go to the back end of my report, you will see some important Chair's actions. So I'd like you to ratify the Chair's actions taken through the Remuneration and Terms of Service Committee on the 15th of April and on the 9th of May. Can I ask you to ratify? Yes. I'd like you also, please, to appoint Jill Pro Tem onto the Audit and Assurance Board for the meeting to be held on the 24th of June. I'd also like you to note that Donna will stand down as a member of the Audit and Assurance Committee from now. And I'd like to thank you for your efforts and your support. This is all part of making sure that the workload is across the IMs is properly adjusted. And we look forward to the board development session in June, and I'd like to draw your attention finally, please, to the corporate risk register. I will come back to it at the end of the meeting to see if the members believe it needs to be adjusted or re-looked at in any way. Is that okay? Thank you so much. I'll hand over to Alex now.
Thanks, Chair. I'm not going to give through the report in any great detail, but I'm happy to take any questions. One of the things that we're working on currently is we have our joint executive team meeting with Welsh Government a week today. So we're just putting together the information to reflect on achievements in 23-24 and lessons learned and some of our priorities for this year. So that'll be going into Welsh Government by the end of today, and we'll share that with the board as well. We also had a meeting last week, joint meeting with colleagues from the NHS executive, just to start to explore, really getting a better understanding of each other's functions, but also to explore how we can work together effectively. And we've agreed to have quarterly meetings during the course of this year as things are emerging to maintain effective communication. You've already mentioned the changes, and I've already apologised to Julie earlier on that I hadn't actually clocked it was the last board meeting, so I hadn't mentioned that in my report. Did it, so hopefully Julie is going to forgive me for that, because we have got to work together for another 4 weeks, which is why I thought I would have another chance to say that. But I promise you, I'll put it on July board. I'll have to take any questions. Or...
Any questions for Alex?
Thank you, Chair. Can I refer to your note with regards to registered band 4 nurse work? Now, I appreciate we've got a paper that's coming later on the agenda, but this specifically looks at our role in terms of commissioning. And I was pleased to read that we are going to learn from the experience of others across the UK. What is being done? How is that being done? And what are we then doing with that information to inform the later paper that we've got, please?
Okay, so actually subsequent to these papers, what the British Government have done is actually set up a programme board, which is what we're seeing actually all the work actually to introduce actually the band 4 registered nurse associates into Wales. And as a result of that, actually there is a programme board. They have already set up 4 subgroups as well. One is actually related to the education, the other one is the workforce, the other one is practice, and the other one is actually relating to the legislation. And these have only just been set up actually in the last few weeks. And through that work and the work that's been undertaken by Lynn Middleton and Rhiannon Jones actually to date, actually that actually will inform actually all the work actually that has been gathered and actually evidence actually in their report. And I'll come on to that actually in my agenda item. But the work is being, and we're also learning and have been offered considerable support actually from English universities, because the report actually did do a lot of investigation and review actually into the English system. And we've actually had very supportive actually information coming across, and that will actually inform the people represented on those programme boards and subgroups, which will include health education institutions, education providers, actually the health boards, etc. So it's quite a wide-ranging membership.
So that is helpful, and I can see that in the paper. My question is, though, in terms of commissioning, so what are we doing with regards to previously Health Education England or Health Education Scotland to learn how they managed it from our perspective? Yes. And from our board position? Except on the programme board okay. And the detail of the universities. But if we can learn from how they manage the commissioning element, I think that would be helpful for us.
And that is something that we are learning. But actually, I have to remind everybody that they didn't commission actually in the same framework that we've got in Wales. Okay. So therefore, they didn't have an organisation. So Health Education England did not commission it. It was undertaken actually in England actually through an apprenticeship route. And that's actually the differences that we are looking at, and that's extensive work that we're actually doing internally to understand what our commissioning responsibilities are and how we can learn from that as well. But there's lots we've actually bring across into that commissioning arena.
Thank you, that's it.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much, Alex. We'll now move on to agenda item 3.1, planned care priorities.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Glenn?
So the paper you have in front of you sets out those workforce priorities that we have identified aligned to the National Planned Care programme with the Welsh Government. So we set out the main objectives of the Welsh Government programme there, and I think it's probably important to say we have a fairly small national programmes team that engages with the national programme priorities at various different levels to work through what the key workforce challenges are and the priorities are that we can contribute to. So this paper sets out some of that work that we've undertaken. Some of it relates to engaging on some of the Get It Right First Time or GIRFT reviews that are undertaken. This was not something that we were involved in at an early stage, but we've now sort of become more involved in as time has gone on to make sure that actually where there are things that we can do around developing the workforce, education, training, that we're able to influence and take that forward at the earliest possible stage. You will note that there are some specialty reviews that have been undertaken as well, so areas like ophthalmology, and again, we've been working with Cardiff University around the commissioning of simulation training as part of the education training offer there. I think it's worth saying that the planned care programme is quite broad, and two of the areas that we're focusing on in terms of work, particularly working with the NHS executive, is around looking at how we can educate and train the workforce around operating theatres. So how do we optimise the workforce model there? And again, we set out some of the areas that we're looking at. We've submitted and I think received sort of initial approval that a bid for resources to actually take forward that work, which would be really important to enable us to look at some of the aspects of the workforce model in operating theatres, but also look at things like leadership development and culture as well. So again, really important piece of work that we look forward to being able to take forward. And I think the final area that I just wanted to highlight was around the palliative care end of life competency framework. And again, acknowledging that there's quite a lot of variation in palliative care services across Wales. This was an area that we agreed was really important in terms of developing that competency framework to again support in improving the development of the workforce across both health and social care. As I mentioned before, the national programmes team that we have in place is quite small. We do tend to rely on flexibly increasing that resource where we take on additional pieces of work. So some of the risks around doing this work will be ensuring that we've got the capacity and the right skills to take some of this forward. So this paper is very much here for noting for assurance, but happy to take any questions or comments.
So, Alex.
Sorry, thanks, Glyn. So this was the third in a trio of papers from Dorothy. So if you remember, we had a diagnostics paper in January, a cancer paper at the March meeting, and the planned care. So this kind of completes, if you like, the scope of how this work is being undertaken at a national level. So important also to put our thanks on record for Dorothy and the work that she's led across all of these different agendas. I think for this one, I would say that the workforce is still not central enough to the discussions that go on around planned care. I think, we've made a lot of progress in making sure that's a key feature of discussions around cancer and diagnostics, but still planned care, there tends to be a discussion around activity levels, waiting times, throughput, without really thinking about the workforce around us. This has been much more of a struggle to get workforce to be considered as a key enabler and opportunity to deliver more effectively. And that's been quite frustrating, if I'm honest, because we just talk about waiting times all of the time without really thinking about, well, who do we think are providing those services to support an improvement in waiting times. So it is really important I have a seat around the table of that national board, and that's kind of partly my role is to champion those issues. But the fact that we're in the door now with that theatre project that Gwyn has referenced is really important, because I think we can now show what the opportunities are to really support and improve how, you know, a fundamental piece of that planned care pathway is probably not working as effectively as it could really. So
I wanted to say I really welcome this joining up. Having experience getting it right first time reviews, I hadn't actually clocked that there wasn't a link into HEIW and workforce nationally. And it's really good to see that there is starting to be that join-up, because as Alex has just said, changing the skills of the workforce, the jobs that workforce are actually required or enabled to do actually, and enabled to work differently, are the things that actually start to address the issues within planned care. And I'm really pleased to see there's a join up with the clinical transformation discussions in the clinical implementation networks. It's like we see the need within ophthalmology for significant changes in the way people work. It's good to see that that's now being looked at a national level and spread into other disciplines.
Yeah. And I think probably it's worth saying that some of those structures and some of those relationships are still evolving at the moment.
Any other questions, comments? No. This is an important paper, but I have got a challenge to us. We're getting in the door, we're underlining the message. How are we going to build in a very clear, and this is what happens when we do? So the impact that we have, and to actually build that into the way that we actually present the outcome of this going forwards. Because people have got very short memories if they're not in the organisation. It becomes, oh, well, that's what happens anyway. I think what we're showing is that actually we can make better use of important skills people can have and acquire to actually deal with the problem that's now and going forwards. So I think joining those dots up in a very clear, blatant way as part of our productivity would be really good. And recognising all the things about we're only a part of the system, but what does this important part of the system contribute because of HEIW's contribution? Can we think about that as a tenet to build on going forwards? Okay, so we're asked to note the programme being taken forwards to HEIW, forward in HEIW to support national plan care priorities. And would you like me to write to Dorothy and thank her?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Thank you very much. Agenda item 3.2, National Retention Programme, and Helen and Zoe have arrived. Hello.
Hi.
Can we make room for them to come to the table? You can't have it. Or are you going to go to the front? How are you going to do it?
Whatever you want to see, there's space up here.
Come on.
Perfect.
Yeah, don't sit outside.
I'm going to sit nice and close to the chair.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that'll be a popular move.
Don't worry, I'm in between you.
And so the size is fantastic.
That's right. Are you introducing this, Julie?
Only to say this is Helen and Zoe, and that we are really, really pleased to come and give the first presentation to the board on the retention programme that we launched last September. So we've trailed it in the performance reports and through our updates in various forms, but this is the first time we've got an actual presentation on progress so far. So I'll hand over to the ladies.
Thank you, Dad. The ladies, please note. So thank you, Julie, for that. And you've already received the paper. So what myself and Zoe will do is just pick up a couple of highlights after a bit of introduction context. And then more crucially, Zoe will do, what's the next steps and give you the opportunity to answer any questions to date that's arisen. So you'll be aware, as we all are, that anecdotally for the last several years, staff have been leaving the NHS for reasons such as lack of flexibility, lack of CPD, lack of career progression, lack of good team climate, etc. And that's just been validated by some of the results of the staff survey. So whilst the retention of the workforce has been clearly commenced with the nurse retention programme, this programme is a national programme that puts all our professions at the heart of our future and current workforce supply. As a result of some of the work that's gone on to date, we're already aware of some significant impact projects. Just calling out one in Cardiff and Vale, where in one of their acute areas, they managed to reduce agency spend by creating a culture and climate of inclusion and CPD and flexibility that's actually enticed people from the agency into the environment they're working now as part of that team. So not only reducing costs, but also improving patient care and the quality of service provided. That's just one of the projects that we're aware of. And we're aware of 30 projects already that we are starting to see these benefits from. So it's already having a big impact from the beginning where we started with the nurse retention programme. So I'm going to hand over to Zoe at this point just to talk about some of the key points of that paper and then crucially the next steps and then give you the opportunity for any questions. That was just a quick introduction context. So Zoe, over to you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Just to introduce myself, so I'm new to the organisation. I'm Zoe Gibson and I'm the programme lead for the retention programme. Exciting and nerve-inducing all in one equal measure to be here today. So already during Q1, we've made significant progress with the retention programme. Both the appointment of myself and 10 local retention leads in health organisations across Wales. So we've also been working on developing the programme branding because we think it's really important that this programme lands as a reality and it tells the staff across NHS Wales exactly what we're looking to do. And I think sometimes the term retention can be a little bit ambiguous for those in frontline roles. So we're building a brand around the 3 words of belong, thrive and stay. We think that is exactly what we want to achieve from this programme. So we've also developed our intentions, our community of practice, and also the associated operating principles with that. I'm excited to say we've got our first community of practice meeting on Monday. So we're beavering away trying to get that sorted. It will be majority face-to-face. We've got a commitment from the leads across Wales for that. And we've also launched our retention hub and the associated resources that are available via the Bwrdd platform. I completely acknowledge as programme lead there's a lot more work to be done there because this will be an ongoing development throughout the programme, as will the resources, because they need to be evidence-based and in line with the landscape and situation that we're facing. So already organisations across Wales have undertaken baseline assessments of their retention position using the digitalised tool that was developed internally in HCIW. I think this is a really core piece of learning for me as the programme lead is out there in the landscape. There's not full understanding of current positions from a retention perspective, and although there's a lot of work going on, it's not necessarily focused, and I think we're quite at risk of having a retention pick and mix exercise unless we've got the evidence to support where our issues and our targeted areas need to be. So we're already making great inroads with that and developing electronic dashboards to help us with sort of a heat mapping exercise so we can identify not only local interventions but also opportunities for national work so we can use a proven and effective approach. We've been working hard on developing collaboratively with retention leads, our retention matrix, and that has formed quite a lot of discussion, to say the least. And I think there's an initial focus upon that turnover rates and reductions in. However, we feel quite passionately that retention is multifaceted and one single food measurement isn't going to show development, particularly as retention is relying on cultural and leadership change. So our intention is to build a raft of metrics that are both quantitative and qualitative, as in staff feedback, as well as our more workforce measures, to actually set the landscape and tell the story. So not only does it help us celebrate where we're making a difference, it helps us to stop interventions that haven't realised the benefits that we hope they would, and also help us to forward plan the programme over the next 2 years, making sure the retention hotspots are addressed nationally. So already we've started several scoping exercises for national projects. So I've been working closely with colleagues in allied health professional leadership roles, and also within the primary care workforce, who are approached and are very keen to undertake national programmes of work within those professions. So we're currently developing more bespoke self-assessment tools for them to be able to start assessing their current position. So again, that position isn't necessarily understood. I think one of the major challenges I've identified so far is that of ownership as well. So I'm having quite a lot of door knocking about, how I as a leader can improve retention across NHS Wales. So we've been having quite extensive conversations about ownership and leadership within professional specialties and teams as well. So although challenging, I think it's important to be very transparent about what this programme can achieve. And myself and 10 individuals are not going to be able to resolve retention. So that has been definitely challenging. So our next steps, during the next quarter, our significant focus is going to be on that continued engagement, collaboration and benefits realisation. So as well as the further development of our reporting dashboard, resources, tools and our approaches to retention, and making sure we've got the right interventions in place for NHS. That's our brief overview. So let's welcome any questions.
I thought you said you were nervous. No, well done. No, well done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jill.
Yeah, thank you. It's great, and it's lovely to see this programme now starting to take effect. You picked up a little bit of what my question was. I mouthed to Julie that the baseline being so critical. Have we played that baseline back to people so that there is an agreed start, as it were, so that we don't end up with this mix and everybody saying, well, that wasn't where we started. We, arguments about where the line was.
Yes, at a local level, and that's going to be actually the first focus of our community practice is setting a baseline and giving individuals opportunity to share what projects they've actually undertaken and the evidence behind that. Also so that they can spread and scale. There's quite a lot for flexible working seems to be a hot topic that's being dealt with in a variety of ways, and I think there's a lot of learning that can be shared so we can actually divide and conquer retention rather than all look at the same thing. So it'll be done at a local level in that way, but also we're trying to develop the reporting structures and feedback mechanisms to ensure the conversations are happening not only in HOs but externally across multiple levels in NHS Wales as well. But I don't think the baseline is fully understood, and we're looking to develop some systems to improve the reporting from the initial baselines. So there's that clear prioritised approach.
Any other questions or comments? John?
Thank you very much for the paper, and clearly an important piece of work that we need to be considering. In terms of my questions, firstly, how can you assure the board that we're not duplicating some of the work that's been done in health boards? You give some examples, and so if you can just give us some indication of how you work with health, or how we work with health boards to have a One Wales approach in terms of retention. My second question then is, we previously had nurse retention plan. It talks a little bit about how we can use that to work across other professions. What does that look like, and how are we going about that? And I welcome the conversation that you have in the paper around the performance metrics. I think that is absolutely important. I'm keen to see what that will look like. I think we've got early data, you say in September, that's coming through, and particularly that you're working with health boards on that metrics and those performance data. So those are my two questions essentially.
So the first one was on the engagement and agreeing that we're not going to be duplicating work, and I think that comes down to going around this table, engaging with colleagues. You know, this isn't something that anyone can do on their own. So I think it's about, as an organisation, HIW being very clear on what the programme aims and objectives are, and sharing at multiple levels the work that is going on. But I think it's listening, and I've tried to take the approach with the programme. I'm not going in and dictating what we should be looking at. So it's very much a community of practice approach with the evidence that's evolving and emerging from that about focus areas. So I've tried not to prejudge what I think the issues are from my views and practice. And it's more about the evidence base.
Julie and then Lisa.
Yeah, just to build on what Zoe was saying there. So if you remember, what we've done is we've looked across Wales, and retention is coming back as a really hot topic. So we've decided to put some of our national muscle alongside it. So we've appointed Zoe as our national lead, and then we've given funding to each of the health organisations to employ somebody roughly equivalent to AA. And so that person is embedded locally, because organisations were doing it all very piecemeal.
Okay.
So the baselining of what does good look like, what does bad look like, is being done locally using our tools. And Zoe's job is to kind of really hold the ring on all of that, and also to squeeze it so that we get national data, because again, it's a gap in our national intelligence. So it's very much driven locally, local projects, but you know, the benefits of having this community practice means you can spread and scale. So it won't be duplicated. And what the workforce director is saying to me is, oh my God, thank you for the money. Thank you for the role. That's been incredibly helpful. Some of them are using it to implement the nurse retention plan, which was a commitment in the government's NWIC. Some of them are using it to just do this work. So it's a blend of both. But yeah, it has taken a little while. It was launched in September. Obviously, Zoe is only recently come into post, so incredible progress since she's joined. But also we've needed the health boards to get up to speed with appointing their local leads as well. So locally driven, but nationally kind of steered, I suppose, and enabled.
Doing with, not to.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, totally.
And that's actually, we really welcome actually Zoe into this programme, and actually obviously, you know, knowing her background, actually how health boards work is actually so helpful. But you're absolutely right, Zoe, it's about actually how we spread this actually into the other professions, and we all have got responsibility. And you know, it's quite pleasing, for example, yes, nurses actually started that retention piece, and actually the work actually with Zoe actually is undertaking is dovetailing into that, so it's not left alone. And the other piece, as a result of actually our instructors here in HIW, our other actually professional colleagues like the allied health professionals are asking the same question. So it's helping actually Zoe to deliver that actually through a number of arenas. So you've got your community of practice, but we're actually keeping the executive director of nursing, the physiotherapists, the health and science, all appraised, and the workforce directors, all appraised of what's going on, so that it really strengthens and broadens actually what we're actually trying to do. But it's a very welcomed programme. That's all too.
Donna, did you want to?
Yes, it's a very small point, Chair, and yeah, thank you again for the paper and the presentation. It's really good to hear the work that's going on this. So important. It was just a tiny point around when we were monitoring the impact of the nurse retention plan. And it talks about us aiming to develop a standardised methodology to measure benefit and impact. Just in my experience, we often do this too late in the process. So it kind of comes after it's sort of been launched and happening. We're 3 months down the line, and then somebody thinks, how do we measure it? Or how are we going to? And I suppose I'm just putting a thing out there to say, not necessarily this, but with all of that. The chair reminds us all the time about what's our impact doing, and it's kind of like it almost needs to come a little bit earlier in the process. And so you know, it's not a criticism. I don't want to take it because I think it's fantastic. I was just thinking we need to be cognizant of that with any of the work we're doing.
Anybody else? You gave a great strap line. Which was belong, thrive, and stay. I want to suggest you think of another word in there. Right? I think you should put achieve. I think I think you should think about.
Retention, think of the value of this is coming from.
I know,
Probably.
I know, but
You know,
perhaps it's in the word thrive.
it is,
But
yes,
being an
yes,
educational body, right? Either empowered, or I just like you to reflect on it because it comes up with a great acronym there.
But I think it is about listening actually to what the sort of the community is actually saying, because I know what you're so will actually say there are some people out there that just want to do better help work-life balance, and they don't necessarily want to undertake that actually education element yet. It's just the thrive actually is
Okay.
really resonates.
All right, I just put it out there.
Yeah.
I just put it out there. Ignore it, you will. Ignore it, you will. No, I fundamentally believe that this is a really, really essential step to give people, bring back faith in what they're involved in. This goes to the very heart of when you make up your mind to get into it, that you need to be there. And it'll always have to be recoined. My generation felt it was a duty. Well, people feel differently, so we have to make sure that this works. And I really think that the approach is really commendable. Yeah, and you're not nervous at all. So let's we're asked to note the progress. And we're asked to be assured. I think we also say that the board really supports this. Yeah, it's not just about being assured. It's about making sure you work to make it work. Right. So well done. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Zoe. Thank you, Helen.
Thank you.
All right. We've got Ryan in the room now, haven't we?
Hi, okay,
Hi, welcome, Ryan.
thank you.
I know you're not nervous, so you come to talk to agenda item 3.3, workforce trends.
Yes,
Who's leading on this? Is it you leading on it?
yes,
Yes.
we did start.
Oh yes.
Okay, so just so I come to just provide an overview of the workforce trends report that we've produced, just highlight some of the new additions, and then suggest a new reporting schedule for how we think that this would be good going forward. So I guess for you guys is around just approving publication so we can get it onto our portal, and just to make sure that you're happy with our proposed flow in terms of how we're going to be reporting in the future. Next slide, please. So just as a background, so we produce this report every year. It's high level trend analysis for NHS Wales. It's a single source of truth, and I think there's lots of people who do read this report, and we've been later and sending it out, and we've had feedback that it's really needed and it's really wanted. So just listed there are some of the audiences for this report. Next slide, please. So in terms of the current report, it covers quite a wide sort of array of things. We look at the size and shape of the workforce, so the trends, the time and profiles. We look at pay and agency and how that's changed over time. Sickness, so the trends, obviously during COVID, that was really important. Then we've got the profile, so what are our quality characteristics, Welsh language. And then a bit around performance, so annual appraisals and standard. Next slide, please. So we've added a couple of new additions from feedback. So we've added in numbers of staff who retire and return. We've also looked at vacancy information, so vacancy data from Stats Wales. So that's now coming in. So we felt it was really important to be reporting on that, and as time goes on, we'll be able to trend that. So I think that'll be really interesting analysis. Next slide. We've also added in information from Stats Wales around the GP and wider practice staff. So as time goes on, we're going to have access to more and more data for the dental workforce, pharmacy. So when that starts to come online, we'll start to report it then in the trends report. And then we've also looked at the nationality of staff by staff groups. You can see, you know, medical and dental are by far the biggest in terms of non-UK nationalities. That is really similar to England. So there's a King's report to sort of had a similar chart like this, so you can see that medical and dental is similar, but actually our nursing we're less reliant than England. So I'm interested in that. Next slide. So obviously you can't read this, but this is just for when we spoke to the board in the development day, some of the suggestions where they wanted some information around participation rates. So we've got a participation rate sort of chart. So participation rate is so how full sort of number of how full time you are. So it's your FTE divided by your head count, essentially. So as you can see in almost all the graphs, as the workforce gets older, they work less full time. But we've also included, backed by popular demand, the sickness by staff groups, so sort of deep dive into the different staff groups. So that's been included. Next slide. There we are. So I guess the important bit of this presentation, I think, for you guys is the proposed timeline. So we started doing the report late, and then we engaged with stakeholders on what we needed to have in the dashboard, to have in the report. So we're really late in sending this report out, so keep you aware of that. So we plan to get it back on track and then follow this as a way to work. So in June and July, we'll develop the workforce trends report. And then by August, then we'll come back to the board for sign off for publication, and that will be the annual report that you know. But then in November and December, we intend to do an update report. So that will update with the most recent information, but it'll be a bit more agile in terms of what we're going to show. So it will then link in with our education and training plan. So we'll be able to pull out different staff groups. So then we'll have that published in January, so that the team in HOW can look at that to sort of help feed the thinking around how we go about doing getting the analytics for the plan going forward. I think that is it in terms of, yeah, so next slide. So just to finish, our idea is to put it onto our portal. Hopefully you guys have been able to see our portal, access our portal. So it's a shameless plug for it, and that's what the home of our reports will be.
Thanks, Ryan. I don't think I've ever smiled so much doing a report on trends. So are there any questions or comments for Ryan? I'd like to take this to the chairs group.
Okay.
Jill, sorry, I keep missing you. So
That's all right. No. Only a very
you're just slightly out of my field of vision.
Only a very quick one, really. Just thinking of how it lands with Joe Public and all the organisations that read it. I didn't know whether in the main report, whether the huge increase in admin and clerical needed any further explanation in terms of socialising it with the public. And the second thing I wondered is whether people might say, and so what? So action plans as a result of it. You know, what are people doing with the data? So if you took, for example, the appraisal rates, you know, we're not responsible for the action, but others are. So are there actions as a result of receiving the data?
So we can look at delving into admin, the admin and clerical side of sort of explaining that a bit more. I guess it's it's difficult in this report because the report is like quite factual.
Yeah.
So it's not. So it's just trying to word it in a way that is like, this is what it is, and having some sort of backup. That
It is what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was the headlines I could see and not just.
Yes, I used to really love this report when I was in my Welsh Government role as National Workforce Director, because Bwrdd, which Ryan worked in previously, used to submit it, and it was a great source of data for me. But obviously sometimes there are some things in there that require further explanation and can be landed in different ways. We also know that the RCN look forward to this report with interest, and they do use it in some of their briefings and their factuals and things like that. But I think there is difference from a kind of trends, data, factual report, and a think piece or a thought piece, which is a commentary on what's happening to the workforce in Wales. And I know Sean and I have been talking about, in the context of the Workforce Observatory and the data portal stuff, how we have kind of more of a news bulletin perhaps on, you know, changes in the workforce and what that looks like. So that would be a companion piece rather than, I think, in this trends report. This is really valuable. The admin and clerical has been going up for years. I remember Andrew Goodall, when he was the Director General in government in 2014, asking me, why is admin and clerical going up by so much? And that's been a continuing trend. And I don't know if it still holds true, but the explanation I got from the service at the time was they're easy to get, and actually they can be cheaper to put alongside some of the programmes and things that we're running. So there was a bit of a shift in terms of some of the staffing models, but obviously they do include all of your general management. It's not admin in the sense that we might use the admin term in public sector in other fields. So.
John?
Chair, I have to say this is an excellent report. You know, compliments to the team who have been involved in this. It's a significant report. It's written well. With my academic hat on, it just wants me to create cross tabs and correlations amongst some of the stats that are there to see if there's any cause and effects, etc. But we'll leave that for another day. It did also leave me thinking, particularly in terms of the admin and clerical, I wonder to what extent some of this can be supported and perhaps developed or resolved in terms of digital solutions. And I think there's a digital answer to a lot of what we're seeing if we were trying to explain it. But the other thing I would say is what it left me thinking was that it reinforces the need for us as a board to ensure that we're innovative in our role redesigns, the scope of professionals practice, the nature of our workforce, and that we need to be open-minded in terms of what roles we've got in our NHS and what that looks like.
It's again, I seem to be on the tiny point side of the table today, so apologies, but absolutely agree with John. Great report. Loved reading it. Lots of great information. And picking out just one slide in the main paper, which was about the statutory and mandatory compliance by staff group, and noting the medical and dental performance in that. And again, it's that kind of next question. So what? So is that an issue of relevance? Is that an issue of time and workload that they are not in a position to be able to reach the levels that on statutory and mandatory compliance that we see with the other staff groups? But it's that kind of report. It's like, oh, and what? And it's so, you know, again, welcome it in.
So I seem to be into this so what questioning this afternoon, right? So I think you're going to be able to count the number of hits onto this. That's one thing. I think it's very important it remains the version of the truth, not just pure, right? And actually, it's kite marked as being the version of the truth. That would be an achievement. The second thing is, if we were able to, we might be able to use AI to analyse the people who are using the data or accessing the data, what are they doing with it? So the so what thing, to give us an impression about the impact of this on the system, would be not just the number of hits, but the number of places where we can evidence that accessing that data made a difference. It could be as wide as policy. It could be as wide as service redesign. It's got a huge potential impact. But the most important thing is the demand for it is linked to why. And that's a separate thing to what I think we need to think about that in the future. How do we show that this data, like the data from the Office of National Statistics, right? They do look at how it's used and how many publications quote it, how many policies quote it, is it regularly used in the workforce discussions. I think it's a great thing they've got out of the ground. My final point is it should never stop being developed. So this is not, this is as it is today. It's great as it is, but we need to make sure that you've got the engine to keep it changing. And perhaps some of the stuff will fall off and new stuff will come on. But Alex, I think this is a great achievement.
Yeah.
When you think how it started, by the way, when you're saying you're going to catch up?
Sorry?
Now you got it?
Yeah.
Or when you're going to say you're going to catch up?
Yeah, so you'll have a report done by August for you to region.
By August?
Yeah.
Yeah, no leeway?
No, it's fine.
No. Okay. Thank you very much. Can I thank you? And how big is your team?
Not big enough.
This is not 1 million people.
No.
Right. This is a very personal personal report, I would say.
Yes.
So congratulations. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So in terms of the official business, where the board is asked to approve the publication. Yes, you're happy with that?
Yes.
The production and circulation of a new accompanying update report.
Yes.
A socializing of these reports via our communications and engagement team. I think that is a really key bit of this, to provide a narrative that enables explanation. Okay. And a new reporting schedule, 2 reports a year. Thank you so much. Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you, Ryan.
Okay. Can I move us on to agenda? Yeah.
Sorry, Chair. There was one point I wanted to make around the admin and clerical. I believe that would also include digital staff groups, so the growth that we'll see in digital over the years will be reflected in that.
So for people outside of this who look at this, they will make their own interpretations. We need to be helping people understand what lies behind the data. It's not this report that will do it. It'll be a commentary outside of this report. So the devil in the detail is the detail in the devil. Right? We need to be very clear how we use it.
We actually need to have very clear data definitions.
Yes.
Which would help people.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
one point.
Yeah. Which will then make people say, well, can you actually differentiate in that font what all that is? So
It's inevitable.
it's going to grow.
We do have data definitions agreed. There's been a huge amount of work done by the digital and data team to get those agreed, and they align with ESR. So
Are they published with a report like in the ONS?
I have seen them in the past, but we'll double check.
I actually think if we're publishing this as a true source of the source of truth, we need to look at the ONS's policies and think about whether or not that is something we need to adopt. Well done, though. Right. Can I move on? Agenda item 3.4, Band 4 Regulated Nursing Associate Update. Lisa.
So we did discuss this actually just earlier on, but actually this particular report is bringing to the board's attention the introduction of a registered nursing associate because this is a new role for Wales. This role is currently regulated in England, and actually the report actually describes actually the work that's been undertaken to review actually that role actually in England, and then actually the Cabinet Minister has made a policy decision actually to introduce that into Wales. There's a lot of detail in this report, and actually since I actually submitted this report, the full report is now available actually on that Welsh Government website, and the link is in that paper. Okay, at the very end, into the appendices, I've actually added that in for you. So the full report is there, and from that report, which is quite an extensive report, you will see actually the review, the evaluation of all the work that's been undertaken actually in England, and how we've come to a conclusion collectively actually across actually numerous stakeholders in Wales in order to progress this. Now, this is actually the start of the journey. The phase 1 was the review. The phase 2 is now actually taking forward the recommendations actually in that particular report. There are actually sort of 20 actually recommendations, and guess what? Actually, further those are recommended for us as Health Education and Improvement Wales to take forward. They're very key, and I've described them in this particular report. But we need to actually recognise actually the Welsh Government is the policy lead on this, and they are driving this piece of work, but they're engaging actually with a number of stakeholders in order to progress actually this particular piece of work. Our role actually as HEIW is actually they are recognising us as the Strategic Education Authority actually, and will undertake the commissioning of any education that actually is required, and that is a key piece of the work. We've actually, as I said, actually got a number of recommendations, and they are quite extensive. Some of those actually do dovetail across to some of the other owners, but actually in the main, these are the ones that we actually need to be looking at. The phase 2 actually was only just started, and the programme board, as I've said, actually is designed, and that engages actually health boards, HEIs. We're also engaging actually with further education colleges as well, because obviously there's a piece of work in there as well of recognising the current work that we're undertaking with healthcare support workers, because that will impact on our current actually sort of workforce and how we're actually developing them in the future as well. And we've got some very successful programmes being delivered by our further education colleagues as well. So there's a lot of detail in there, and what I would say is actually this phase 2 has only just started. So we've had the first meetings of actually most of those subgroups now. This is still dependent upon the UK national government actually agreeing for this legislation to be passed. So the work is going to continue, but at this point in time, we still haven't got the mandate to introduce it actually in Wales. But nevertheless, we are working actually with our colleagues actually in the Nursing and Midwifery Council, actually with universities who deliver the programmes in England as well as all of our other stakeholders in order to be prepared in this arena.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Lisa. Everybody's read the report, heard Lisa's update. Any questions? Comments?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report. Lisa, can I just ask for some clarification around the recommendations? Because I just want to understand the role of Welsh Government, the role of universities, and the role of us as a commissioning body. And when I read some of these recommendations, it leaves me a little bit confused. So, for example, number 5 talks about establishing and building a level 6 18-month programme, bridging, etc., etc. And immediately I thought, well, why is that a HEIW responsibility? And there are a few others. So is it the case that these recommendations are very much collaborative? Or,
Yes. So basically, these are recommendations that came out of the particular report that they completed. So Welsh Government have got some recommendations, and HEIs have got some recommendations as well. So these are current recommendations. They are not actually absolute. And through the subgroup arena that we've got currently, we are working through those. You're absolutely right to highlight that particular one, because in terms of commissioning, responsibility for commissioning education is HIWs
Absolutely.
and not necessarily the Council of Deans,
Yes.
which is something that we've actually highlighted at linked to them. So as you can appreciate, John, that report that you was written, and now we're actually sort of in a way in collaboration, in discussion, actually with Lynn and Lee Jones, actually in order to actually explain actually that landscape that we actually have in terms of commissioning, and that's actually the working through. So we recognise that some of these will adapt and
So you're moving towards more clarity.
absolutely.
That's it. Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Alex?
I was just going to emphasise that I think that is a, that lack of understanding of specifically what we do and how we do our business is a risk that is being managed actively, because I think there is a lack of understanding of the commissioning process, which is really something that's really important within Wales.
Absolutely.
Something that we have to make sure is crystal clear.
And we need
Governance
clarity on our role.
from a conflict of interest perspective, etc.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, any other comments, questions? I'm asking to note the policy position on the Registered Nurse Associate role and the setup of the Welsh Government Registered Nurse Associate Programme Board, and be aware of the HEIW assigned recommendations where there's clarity being sought, and recognise the need for resource to support this programme of work. Yes? Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you, Lisa. Agenda item 3.5. Paul. Favourite bit. Revenue resource plan, budget setting, 24-25.
Thank you.
Silkworth, how's here? Yeah.
You already prefaced this earlier on when you talked about the increased financial risk that we've already sort of built into our plans and things for this year. Obviously, we are operating in what we've described as a flat cash scenario this year. So in some cases that's a real reduction in funding. So it's probably quite different to the sort of funding environment that we've operated within certainly over the last sort of few years. And I suppose it's very much in that context that we presented this revenue resource plan. Back in March, we brought the IMTP to the board, and they approved that, acknowledging that there was a level of financial risk that we built in to the IMTP. I think it reflects some of our understanding of what's happened historically, but also that sort of increased sort of financial risk appetite that we as a board felt comfortable in sort of taking forward in the way that we commit resources and manage the financial position alongside delivering all of our priorities. So the paper sets this out. We are obliged obviously to set a balanced financial position, but it is a balanced financial position with an increased level of financial risk. A number of the priorities that we identified in the IMTP, we have now resourced through this paper. So we've set what we believe are realistic budgets to deliver those priorities. But we have effectively, at the start of the year, over-committed financially on the basis that we believe during the year there will be underspend generated. So whether that's through our commissioning budget and fill rates and other factors, or some of the other programmes that we've got budgets on, where we know that sometimes slippage occurs in spend plans. So it's very much in that knowledge that we've set these budgets. As a result of that, we've set what we've described as a negative or a deficit reserve. Normally, we try and hold reserves in the eventuality that if something goes wrong, we've got money set aside to deal with those things. A negative reserve is effectively the opposite to that. We've overcommitted, and during the course of the year, we will need to make that reserve up through some of the other spends that we would probably expect to occur during the year. But it does mean that we can actually delegate what we believe are realistic budgets to budget holders to deliver their IMTP priorities. So I just wanted to sort of make that point up front, because that is I think, practicing our increased financial risk appetite as a board. The paper talks about the methodology that we've applied. I won't go into that in detail. I assume people have read it. The largest part of our financial plan is based around the education training plan. We have taken this opportunity to look at the autumn cohort, and in setting the budget, the commission budget for the autumn cohort of learners, we've assumed a fill rate of 95%. Previously, we've tended to work on 100%, which is probably overly optimistic. The 95% means that financially we have less wriggle room as we go through the year. So if we achieve a 95% fill rate in autumn, we will have spent all of the commission budget, and we will still have this negative reserve to deal with. So that's about sort of calculating the financial risk and trying to balance it as we go through the year. But I think it probably is a more realistic picture of actually how we try and make best use of our resources to educate and train and develop the workforce. We've also built into the budget some assumptions around things like staff turnover. So there's presumably an Agored vacancy factor. So this will make assumptions about vacancies. Again, there's a level of risk there. If we have much lower staff turnover and very few vacancies, then financially that and spend doesn't get realised either. So again, we've taken, I think, what is a reasonable balanced view on things like staff turnover as well. There are a number of risks that we know could materialise during the course of the year. So in terms of the education training plan, we committed to a higher level of GP training places than we'd originally planned to in the education training plan. That's something the board agreed to earlier on in the year. That potentially has a risk of up to £1 million if that materialised, and we didn't see any underspends elsewhere within the commission budget. In addition to that, there are some Welsh Government policy changes that we know have taken place during this year. The one around tuition fees, we don't believe will be a risk this year, in that there's no intention for us to increase our tuition fees during this year. However, we will probably need to review them as part of our contract review process for the 25-26 financial year. The other policy change that I believe will impact is around the bursary and the maintenance loan. So with eligible students potentially choosing to take up the bursary and the loan this year, could mean that there's an additional cost as a result of that policy change. That's not something that we budgeted for. It's not something that's covered within our allocation. And we've been very clear with Welsh Government that's a financial risk, that if it materialises, we would want to go back and have a conversation with them about how the policy change is funded. But again, I think it's just important to highlight that to the board. So I think with those main changes, I didn't want to cover everything that's already stated in the paper. I'm bringing this paper for the board to approve so that we can delegate those budgets to budget holders for this financial year. Thank you very much. Happy to take questions.
Thank you, Glenn. It's gone very sombre. Any questions or comments? It's very clear, Glenn. It's very clear, and I'm glad you referred back to our risk appetite. Have you reflected on the corporate risk register?
So elements of these risks are in the corporate risk register. So I think they are covered.
The other thing I think would be very helpful is the impact, that not just on the financial plan this year, how it impacts going forwards because of the cumulative effect of decisions. and how it could affect our decisions for next year. I think having that laid out would be in a one place would be quite a useful thing.
Yeah, that's fine, and we've already done quite a lot of that work as part of producing the education training plan for 25-26.
Yeah, because I think that people think that's great for this year, but the compounding risk, because some people are in training 3, 4, 5. So the other thing I want to talk about, I want us to think about it going forward, is efficiency of education and training. Not just how many, but actually the delivery, how effective is the education and training and getting people their qualification and able to practice in the most, propitious time. So I think the effectiveness and efficiency of debate goes alongside the value debate.
Absolutely. And making sure that the people that we train and educate are good and able to go into the workforce.
There's a lot to go at. So we're asked to agree the methodology utilised. Can I ask you to support that? Yeah. To note the financial assumptions are set out in the IMTP, and note the financial risks outline and agree the proposed management of risks during this financial year. Yeah, thank you very much. Diolch yn fawr. Angie, you're here. Hi. Welcome. Train, work, live.
Thank you. Bwrdd pawb, thanks for allowing me to come and present this paper. So I'm going to assume you have read it, but just to pull out some key points. This is one of the regular series we periodically come and share the activity and sort of the work that we're doing. And I think you'll agree there's been a lot of activity since the last time we shared a paper. I didn't want to go too far into the background, but just to remind colleagues, this work was started in Welsh Government and it came across to HLW late 2020 when movement of people was still very difficult, and also this campaign, it is an attraction campaign, it's not a recruitment campaign, was very much around trying to attract people. I'll use the term internationally, but I mean outside of Wales. So it is UK, but internationally as well. I think we've done really, really well we've taken a different approach to some of the work that we're doing. We've rebranded, we've broadened our approaches. I will mention we are now on the buses, or we were on the buses. The campaign has ended. For those of you who know me, you know that was my goal. But I did get my bus. But actually, one of the advantages, in all seriousness, we were very fortunate in other people not wanting the bus, and we still had an overshow up until about 4 weeks ago on some of the underground stations. That was just fortunate for us, but it was quite good, and we did have some good expression of interest from that as well. I think the paper will talk about some of the work we've been doing, some of the campaigns, very high level, very slick, very professional campaigns, and it is quite select in the way that we do it so that we get the maximum impact. So those are the big campaigns, but we've also recognised there's a need for more local campaigns as well. And so that is our sort of broadening our reach now into trying attracting students into universities, working with the careers team, which also sits under me. So it's all nicely aligned. Also the trainees, trainings for medics, which is where it started with the GP campaigns. And they are still running periodically in various bursts. Our most recent big campaign was the dental one. And there is a link in the paper to the latest video. I know you've seen one of them, but they are really slick and they are really trying to sell what Wales has got to offer in terms of the technical side of dental training at the moment. So again, really good there. I said it's an attraction campaign. It's really difficult to try and say because of our campaign somebody went into post. And we're trying to get better and better into working through how we can demonstrate that. And it is really difficult because the campaign is about attraction. We can give our attraction statistics, we can give our website users have increased, etc., etc. But we're now starting to challenged the team to sort of think differently, and they started broadening the campaign. And I think we described, or I described in the paper about going far, and we went further this year. We went to India. We paired up with shared services, and as a result of taking our attraction part of the work, we were able to attract people to stands. We were able to have a look at CVs. We're fortunate one of the team has a background in medical recruitment, and that resulted in making 23 offers of psychiatrists to come to Wales, the first of whom land on the 15th of July. So, you know, that because of the different nature of the approach, that has worked. So that's a direct sort of provable impact, but also there's a number of tables in the paper around the trainee rates, and you can see that there is definitely a difference in our fill rates before and after Train Work Live has come into play. That is not saying it's the only thing, because there have been incentives and other things, but there's definitely something in there that it is absolutely worth carrying on with this work. So we are planning our next campaign, which is something we haven't done before, which is going to be a summer campaign. It is a generic campaign, but it's also going to have a mental health focus to it as well. And that kicks off softly next week with the RCN conference. So anybody going to the RCN conference on the train in Newport will see some great big hoardings, which are Train Work Live. And we're also hoping to get one of these lorries with you know, the adverts that go on the side of the lorry, so we can drive it from the station and then up to the ICC. But hopefully, if you see adverts around the tourist hotspots in Wales, we're targeting those through the summer holidays as well, and we're linking up with the health boards to make sure we can point people with QR codes and all of that stuff to try and you can holiday in here, you can holiday all the time is the sort of approach. We haven't quite got the line yet, but we're working on that. So I think the paper gives it a bit of a flavour of where we've been, where we've come from, what we're doing, where we're going, and also how we're trying to do that measurement piece and that value added piece as well. And in the appendix, you'll see lots of examples of something. I think the other thing to pull out is we've just put an example of where working best delivers the best results. So the example there is of the dental team, where a lot of preparation, a lot of work with the dental team, because the more information we get, the better the campaign can be. So it's working with those experts. So I hope you enjoyed the paper that we did. It's a great campaign, and we really, really enjoyed it.
Okay. Questions or comments? Are we going to the National Eisteddfod?
Not this year, although we couldn't get a stand. I think.
Yes, we've got a stand.
We are. Sorry, it's the Agored stand. I was thinking of. Sorry. Yes.
There's a great big roundabout in an arid park, which is just gagging for a big concert. We recruit well from the valleys. There'll be loads of people at the Eisteddfod, and there'll be lots of Welsh speakers there. I would hope that, we need to be encouraging them.
We're certainly trying to maximise everything we get, and also do it in stages so that we do it in the right way, because overshow doesn't work either. So we'll pick that up, and we're at the Royal Welsh as well. We also give our things to people who are going to other events so that we can get. Okay. So we are going to Berlin, for example. One of the mental health teams are sharing some of their work that we've been supported as HEIW. And so we are making sure that in their kit bag, they have all of our Train Work Live goodies at the same time.
Okay. So I'm asking you to note the subject for assurance. Thank you very much, Angie.
Thank you.
Thank you
very much.
Thanks, Chair.
So it is now 12:10. I'm going to suggest a 10-minute comfort break for everybody. So we'll meet back here at 12:20. Is that okay? Yeah. Diolch yn fawr.
Hello, Catherine, can you hear me? You're showing is on mute at the moment. Hear me? Yes, I can hear you. Yes, I can hear you. Okay, thank you.
Focus in the next, in the next hour or so. Okay. Right, we're good to start. Recording's on. Thank you. First on all, we go straight into agenda item 4.1, the performance report, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. So this is the performance report effectively for the last financial year. Most of the data that we use is based on the 4 periods, 4 quarters of the year. You'll see that the cover paper just provides some headline messages around the IMTP deliverables. So out of the 51 that were still sort of in operation last year, we're reporting that 47 of those were achieved. There were 4 where some of the work was delayed, and the plan is to complete that work during the first half of this financial year. There's also a section there on education, training, commissioning, and again you'll see that the spring cohort of learners, we managed to increase the intake in some of those courses over and above the forecast that we previously shared with the board. So whilst the fill rates were lower than we'd originally planned for, there are again some sort of positive stories in terms of some of those courses and uptake of them. I've highlighted there again in the report, again, some of the key sort of commissioning target areas, particularly around areas like nursing, and also just highlighted some of the issues around escalation of performance, both in terms of education providers, but also you'll see further on in the report some of the escalation around the quality of education training within placements in NHS bodies as well. And then finally, just to sort of draw to the board's attention that we do look at organisational performance, and again we've captured some headlines around that. We've also taken the opportunity to include some of the NHS staff survey headlines in this version of the performance report as well, which I think highlights again some of the areas where people have responded positively in the staff survey, but also areas that we know we need to focus on as an organisation. So I didn't really want to go into any more detail on the basis that I know people read this report in a lot of detail themselves. So happy to open it up for questions and comments.
There was a rise of sardonicus around the room when you said read in detail. I think that's a really accurate description. So any comments or questions? Nothing.
Okay, thank you. I know you handle a lot of things, but I want to ask a question about neurodiversity population, because now neurodiversity population increase around 15 and 20%, and 60% of them have thought about taking their life, and 35 have attempted suicide, and 15% of people hospitalized because of their situation. And waiting list for diagnosis, again, nearly some places in 2 years. And increase the number of psychiatrists and psychologists, sadly not helpful neurodiversity people. For example, in suicide, when people attempt suicide, mental health crisis don't know a lot neurodiversity, and sadly they are not really helpful for the other people. So my question, is it possible to consider about different kind of education for neurodiversity people? Maybe suggest like educate neurodiversity people to help the other neurodiversity people, because believing me, it's a very big problem if we are neurodiversity.
Okay. Who's going to take that?
So briefly, there's in medical training and in dental and pharmacy, part of the national recruitment is to identify additional needs that students or trainees particularly might have, and we highlight that, and there's a process by which we not only identify them, but we also support them. And if they've got needs of how to adapt their education because of their neurodiversity condition, then those things are put in place. So I think we've got a mechanism of doing that, where the education of neurodiversity is part of the curriculum. So I'm disappointed that psychiatrists and psychologists don't have the skills to help people with that, but I might come to Tom to ask about that, but I thought that was part of the curriculum. Whether there's services for neurodiversity is another question. And that is probably something that need to look at health boards as whether they provide that.
Can we take that away? Because Ainsley, our programme manager for the mental health workforce plan, is plugged in with a lot of groups working on this issue, and she would be able to give us much better insight into what's already going on and what we're thinking of doing in the future as well. So can we have a separate conversation about that?
Yeah, of course.
After the meeting. It is a really important issue, and it hasn't fitted in exactly anywhere, but I know we've had a lot of connection with Welsh Government groups that are looking at this to see what we can do, what part we can play.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
John?
Thank you, Chair. I think we should acknowledge the team who put this together, because this is a development report which is incredibly helpful for me as a board member. It certainly gives me assurance, or certainly makes me aware where there are issues that we need to be concerned about. And I would say it is incredibly helpful, and credit should be given to the appropriate teams. What I would say is, in its journey, I think what's important for us as a board is, yes, it's about gaining that assurance that we're delivering against our IMTP deliverables. That's what this is about. And it certainly gives us that holistic picture. I think more towards impact and outcome and less of narrative is something that we would aspire to. And I would also say we need to be very careful about the language and the twists that we're putting on some of these statistics. So when I discussed it earlier with Donna rightly reminded me it's about balance. I was a little bit more critical in terms of some of the figures that we've got here, and I've spoken in detail with Glyn about some of the examples that I'm needing. And the language should be about a community within Wales, rather than pointing the finger at perhaps certain elements of our community that are not achieving. We're doing this together, and it's a performance report for Wales in terms of a workforce pipeline. So I've given the detail to Glyn. We've discussed how we can develop it, but overall, very pleased. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, John. Donna.
So yeah, I do sound like I'm echoing John in a lot this afternoon, but yeah, superb report, so much detail. One of the highlights for me to read in terms of the information you get from it. Just a couple of quick points. Noticed we'd had 8 data breaches reported in Q4. I know they weren't significant enough to need reporting to Welsh Government or the ICO, but were there any trends, any themes? Is it, I don't know whether 8 is high for us or not. So that was one. And then I thought some of the information that came out of the staff survey, and I know that those will be being responded to as an organisation, but again, I couldn't help but note, staff saying 31% of them, were having stress was related in their sickness, which again, we need to be cognizant of and looking what we can do. So, but I could pull out 20 or 30 points because it really is a great report, very helpful.
Jane?
Thank you. It is a really good report, and it's got an awful lot in it. And we could spend the whole meeting talking about it. I just wanted to ask one question around the CPD for dental, which is on page 22 of 43 or 169 to 166. And it's just a weird curve, which I don't understand. Go from very small to huge to very small in terms of usage. And I wondered why there'd been such a drop-off after we'd managed to engage so many dentists. Maybe a question you want to take away? Let's push it out.
Don't know the answer to that. It's I think I'll find out and I'll get back to you.
Thank you.
Alex?
Yes, sorry, just in terms of the staff survey. So I should have highlighted in the Chief Executive report earlier on that one of the things that we're doing as an organisation that we feel links with the staff survey is looking at how we improve the hybrid working model. Because the research is demonstrating that for a lot of people, that is adding to workload and creating additional stress because there aren't necessarily any guardrails around it. So particularly, for example, for new starters and younger people who are lacking support, working from kitchen or a bedroom or whatever in a new environment. So and also that sort of homework balance thing about when you walk away from work. So we have started to put some more clarity in around that hybrid working model as a key response to the staff survey, which
I did sort of put in my chief executive report earlier on, but that's one of the drivers.
Yeah.
Any other comments?
Yeah, just with regards to the data breach query, it's slightly higher than we usually have. We have about 4 or 5. And we took the report through the IGM committee. The comment from the team was that it possibly reflects the fact that there's a high profile for data breaching and people are more aware of what they need to do. In terms of pattern, no, but I'll provide the detail on that for you, and just emphasise that there not needs to be material breaches.
So Glenn, what is material? Is that we've moved from we wish we could have a report on to, oh, this is an interesting report, and it's been flavoured now. So I think the message is that we'll never be satiated. Right? It'll always be something, I hope, that will cause debate and ask questions. I think for the executive team to have this quality of report available allows you to troubleshoot. And that's exactly what it's about. It's not about, I don't think a scorecard is useful, but actually watching trends and increasing the depth of understanding what lies behind this data. I just think that it's a tick in the box for progressive, and I think it needs to be honest and open. And I would like to see more about value, effectiveness, and efficiency. But you know, we weren't in that place. That we built this from zero. So, given our IMTP and our education training plan and the workforce needs, it's a big ask to get it all into this. So, yeah.
I agree with you, and I would hope that the way that we framed the IMTP this year allows us to start measuring outcomes and impact a little bit more and reflective for report going forwards.
I think what would be great is after a year of the report running to agree a set of questions that we want the reports to answer the following year. That might help focus and still drive and cultivate. So look, we want you to pass our thanks to the team that put this together. They need to understand we'll never be satisfied, but this is a pat on the back. I think we also want to, we've received the report, and I think the degree of assurance we can get from the report is on is steadily progressing. So, and I think we're able to ask very difficult questions because of the report, which is good. So thank you very much, Glenn. And now we move on to another highlight of the day, the Director of Finance report.
Thank you very much. Thank you. To a certain extent, I've covered some of the sort of risk issues in the previous resource plan paper, so I won't rehearse those again. Really, again, this is just this is an early report in terms of early in the financial year. So you'll note that in terms of our revenue position, we're reporting a very, very small deficit. I think it probably just reflects the fact that actually our budgets and the way that we're running the finances will be a lot tighter this year. You'll see that there are some reasons set out, and I think sort of on a month-by-month basis, we will see some small variations in financial performance. The key elements then will be around any significant slippage in spend in some of our programs, and obviously the commissional budget. So later on in the year, particularly around once we know what the intake for the autumn cohort of learners looks like, uptake of bursary, and those people who've continued on courses or not, will give us a better indication financially of how things are looking for the rest of the year. So I think autumn time, probably November, will be a fairly key time where we will want to come back and particularly sort of delve into some of that in a bit more detail with the board. We are looking at some of those early warning indicators. So obviously we know at the moment what applications are looking like for the next academic year. Fairly soon we should get an idea of things like offer rates from universities and whether that's giving us a trend in a particular direction. I think these are very much sort of proxy indicators, but hopefully it will allow us to start to get a feel for what the potential fill rates onto our courses may look like as we go into the autumn period then. So it's very much trying to use that data to help inform the board as we go through the year, so that it's not just a surprise report in November time. So we will look to try and do that as we go through the year. Most of the report, I think, is sort of fairly standard, self-explanatory, so I wasn't going to sort of go through it in any detail, but happy to take any questions or comments. Thanks.
Any questions, colleagues? No, we're happy to accept this report, receive it. Thank you very much. So we asked to note to approve. No, hang on. Asked to note the performance against key financial targets, including the reserves position, and we asked to note the risks and opportunities which may impact on the year-end financial position. Okay, in the context of the financial position of NHS in Wales. Yes. Okay, thank you very much, Glyn. 4.3, Complaint Secretary, David.
Diolch yn fawr iawn, Cadeirydd. Partffurf hon yn gofyn am gymeradwyaeth o'r polisi trin cwynion diwygiedig. Mae gan AGIC polisi pwrpasol sydd ar adlewyrchu enrolni fel corff addysg ac hyfforddiant. Mae ein rheolau sefydlog yn gofyn bod y bwrdd yn gyfrifol am cymeradwyo polisi cwynion. Mae'r newidiadau arwaithedig yn dod o dwy gyfeiriad. Yn gyntaf, da ni'n ymateb i'r rhai o'r argymhellion o fewn ymgyrch codi llais heb ofn, neu speaking up safely. Yn ail, da ni'n ymateb i argymhelliad o'r asesiad strwythuredig gan Archwilio Cymru, ac roedd yr argymhelliad hynny yn ymwneud gyda putting things right, a bod ni cyfleu y broses yn gryno. Mae'r polisi arwaithedig wedi cael ei ystyried gan y tîm gweithredol ynghyd â'r grŵp ddeuoliaid a ddirprwyon. Felly, da ni'n gofyn os gwelwch yn dda i'r bwrdd cymeradwyo polisi cwynion sydd wedi sydd ynglwm yn atodiad un o'r rhandir.
Diolch, David. So, and as we're asked to approve the complaints policy, are there any questions or comments to David?
Just a couple of them. Obviously, it talks about the complaints being made within 6 months of the event, being complained about. Or is that as well coming to light? People are aware of that they've got a reason to complain?
It would be both, and if it's a serious issue, we waive the 6 months.
Yeah, so I was just checking on that because that's the usual thing you see in complaints policy, isn't it? But you may not know that you've got a reason to complain.
Yeah.
And then it was obviously, it seemed quite prescriptive about how you have to make the complaint, and our policy in terms of if people choose to raise complaints in a different way, how we respond to that.
We would, yes. The aim is to bring the complaints in, so we help them as much as possible. But the aim is to highlight these are the key elements and the risks that of the complaint that we need to have to be able to investigate. So it's not prescriptive. We wouldn't use it as a barrier.
Yeah, it was just that sort of email it in here sort of thing. It's if somebody wanted to just pick up the phone and talk to somebody about something as opposed to necessarily. So we are being sort of. That's fine. And there's one typo, but I'll give you that.
David, do you think that the policy is very clear, but it's the culture in which the policy is applied that I think is important, or as important as the actual policy? Yes. So do you think it's clear enough about the culture of the organisation and why it wants this to be an effective complaints policy.
I think so the cultural organisation is probably the most challenging thing, isn't it? So we currently are implementing the Speaking Up Safely programme at Welsh Government, and that's all about getting the right culture in place. So I think there are references there to that. I'm hoping that it's as clear as possible to be looking to invite complaints to investigate them. It does emphasise there that this is an opportunity for us to
Can't help but play back, listening with fascination and then acting with intent. I can't tell you how core that is to all the inquiries that are going on at the moment. And I think whilst this is about the policy, and I just think contextualizing the policy against our culture of wanting to make this effective for very good reasons, because it makes us a good, good employer, a place where people feel safe and want to work. And I just think that's an important point. It read to me like a very technical document, right? Really good, technical, and strong.
I think you've actually got a good point there. I think it's important really because it's about how an individuality finds out about how they can raise a concern or raise a complaint. And I think that's the importance of probably our website, of yes, not creating that on our website for our benefit. We've got the complaint process identified, but it's how we encourage people to raise concerns and complaints where they wish to. So I think, and we've come across this in a number of areas really within the website, from our directorate. But basically, it's about putting our sort of feet into the shoes of that person who wants to raise a concern, and does that meet their needs? And I think Donna's got a very good point really. In that it's about if people have got any learning difficulties, if they've got sort of sight issues, how then would they do that? Because they need to understand how they do it as well.
Well, they might be so damaged that they feel they're too vulnerable.
And I think at the moment, a phone is key as well, not just email.
So I think as board members would be very keen to make sure that this is genuine, seen as a genuine and open as possible.
And easy to maneuver through that.
Okay, so I'm asking you to approve the complaints handling policy. Yeah, thank you very much. Governance, leadership and accountability standard. David eto.
Diolch yn fawr iawn, Cadeirydd. Felly papur i'w nodi ydi hon. Mae'n ofynnol bod Agig bob blwyddyn yn cadarnhau ein cydymffurfiaeth ag elfennau perthnasol o'r cod llywodraethu corfforaethol yn ein datganiad llywodraethu blynyddol. Mae'r asesiad ynghlwm yn atodiad 1. Mae'n braf gallu adrodd eleni nad oes unrhyw wiriad oddi ar y gyfynion cod. Felly, dyn ni'n gofyn i'r bwrdd os gwelwch na ystyried yr asesiad, yr atodiad, ac i nodi'r papur.
Eto mae hwn yn bwysig iawn. It's really important. It goes to the heart of good governance. So, are there any questions or comments?
Jill, before I left, did raise a question which she put to me. So, she just felt that the Corporate Governance Code is a kind of a standard sheet of document at the moment, and was asking whether we could have a more bespoke version. I'll confirm I take that back. I'll see if we can amend it, but as I currently understand it, is a standard document that we need to reply to, and we adapt within our responses.
It'd be very interesting to have your reflections, not here, but later on what the board secretaries feel about this in general, and how personal it all feels when you come under a microscope. So it is what it is, and we've got the report. Any questions or comments, Mr. Gareth? No. So we've been asked to consider and note the assessment of the board's compliance with the Corporate Governance Code for assurance. Yeah. Thank you very much. So 4.5 key issue reports from committees. Audit Assurance Committee on the 8th of April, 7th of May. Jane?
Thank you, Chair. There are two reports regarding the two meetings. The first meeting was a standard business meeting, so we received a number of reports from the various auditors who look at our systems, and those are detailed in the report. The second meeting was more about the annual cycle of producing accounts and planning for the year ahead. And again, that is detailed in the report. Also appended is the annual report from the Audit Committee, which was prepared primarily by Jill, who was the former chair, with a few top and tails from me, and that's also here for you to note.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Jane? So we're asked to note the content of the report from the chair of the Audit Committee and note the content of the Audit and Assurance Committee annual report. Yeah, thank you very much. 4.6 delineates the in-committee decisions, and the board is asked to note the report for information. And I alluded to the corporate risk register at the head of the meeting. Having had the discussions we've had today, are there any strong feelings about any additions, changes, or alterations to that corporate risk register as a result of today's meeting? No? Okay, so I'm asking you to note the corporate risk register for assurance. Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Oh, sure, Captain.
So can I ask, in terms of the risk file, which is the cyber security one, considering the discussions that we've had previously in board as to why that is red, and Sian has given us excellent explanation as to why we are where we are. Can I ask, in terms of the implementation plan that we've now got in place, since the last board, although it says there no change to be updated, since the last board and that implementation plan, have we seen any impact on that risk or not? Is it too early?
Thank you, John. It's a very good question. I'm pleased to say that we are in good position or better position with cybersecurity. So we've had a substantial audit recently on cybersecurity. We've now got a fully resourced team. The plan is to reduce the risk on corporate risk register from a 20 to a 15. So the impact will remain 5 because of the consequences of cybersecurity, but the likelihood has come down. We wouldn't want to reduce it any further because it needs to stay as a red risk on our corporate risk register. So 15 would be the lowest we could bring it down to, and the paper is coming to executive team next week to propose that.
Thank you very much, Martin.
Yeah, we're living in very, very interesting times in terms of threat of cyber attack to public bodies.
That's very helpful.
Particularly in and around elections.
It's not a risk that stands still, and that's the challenge.
Okay, thank you for that, John.
There are also track changes on this document. We need to note whether they should be there or not.
Okay, that brings us to the end of today's meeting. There's no other items for urgent business. The HIW board final counts to be held on the 11th of July in the conference room here at Dysgu, and a full open board will be held on the 30th of July, again here at Dysgu. Thank you very much. It's now 12:54. Thank you very much.
Thank you.